Welcome to the How to Not Execute Your Strategy podcast. I'm your host, Tim Ojai. This series is dedicated to the biggest lessons learned from the people who own strategic execution, the senior leaders who live in the center of it. My guest today is JD Stewart. JD is the co-founder and CEO of Stygian HC, a strategic supplier for Fortune 500 companies. With over 25 years of experience in supply chain, logistics, business development, and many other functions, he has a very unique view on how to create and execute strategies for a wide variety of industries and situations. Listen now as we explore how to transform a crumbling strategy into a highly successful pivot. Let's get to it. Hey, JD, I'm so excited to see you. This is going to be a great conversation, but more importantly, the audience needs to know you're one of my closest friends, and I have watched you walk the path of executing a strategy, and you have learned so much in your role as a CEO at Stygian. So I know we're going to have some real truth bombs as the dialogue goes here. So real quick, just introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Stygian.
Gotcha. Hi, everybody. I'm JD Stewart. I'm the CEO of Stygian Corporation. And so we've been in business for the last 4 years. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So the story begins. Take me to a time where you had a strategy that did not go as planned. And what did you learn from it?
I had this big strategy to start a bourbon company and to, be one of the first African-American owned bourbon companies in the country. And so the strategy was to put the bourbon together, distribute it, get it out there, and sell it and really drive that industry, to more African Americans to be owners. And that was our strategy. And with that, when you look at your strategy, the business environment changes on a consistent basis, and you're never ready. And you know the saying, you're not ready. You don't know if you're ready until you get punched in the mouth, right?
Right. Well, and I gotta pause. You were getting buzzed. Just the idea of you doing this, you had some serious spokespeople lined up. You had some serious. I mean, you were talking to Hollywood. You were talking to some. I don't want to do necessarily name drop. I'll let you do the name drop if you want. But you had some serious people lined up for this thing. There was buzz behind this, so the idea was solid, right?
It was solid. Everything to move forward was we were ready to rock and roll. And when you look back, you kind of realize, after I talked with folks in the industry, I started realizing that there were certain holes in our strategy that we weren't necessarily ready for. And obviously COVID wasn't in anybody's strategy, during that time.
Yeah. So let's rotate over. So I don't want to go too deep into the strategy. Let's talk about the execution. So you're ready to launch, you're ready to roll. What happened?
Ready to launch, ready to roll. All of a sudden, COVID occurs. So we're executing, and then we discover that as we execute, I was thinking that we'd be able to start the company on a shoestring budget, and then grow it based on creating a buzz and using the internet and various things of that nature. And when you take a look at trying to execute that, and then people also, which is very important. And then obviously having the roles really clearly defined on who's going to do what, how it's going to happen, wasn't really clearly defined. And so what that did is that caused us to actually start losing steam. And then COVID occurs, and then roadblocks start happening. And so roadblocks a lot of time make it really, really difficult to be able to execute. And that caused us to, have to make a pivot.
So let me back up, because I want to dig into this, because this whole idea of clarity is one of it's the most common obstacle I see. It's also the easiest one to address. But if you don't do it, nothing will get rolled out. So you talk about role clarity. What were some of the roles that you had, and what were some of the pitfalls that occurred between the different players?
Yeah. So role clarity in, the age old adage, sales and marketing, and ops, right? So who does what, and who's really responsible for the sales strategy, and who's actually responsible for the funding, and bringing the dollars in, was the parts that really drove us to, to make that pivot. So we tried to figure out, well, on the sales part, and then also, being CEO, and you never look at a business as a take it personal, right?
Mm.
And so I had to learn, number one, I've got to delegate, and I was taking on, more than I should have, and because of that, it really caused us to slow down, because I didn't delegate and really give it over to people that knew more than I did.
Mm.
So I had to take full accountability and responsibility for that.
That's really tough. I see that a lot, especially with people who are high capacity individuals. Like, I know you're a bright guy. You're a fast learner. There's a lot that you can just show up and go, oh, I'll get it. I'll figure it out. And that's true. You do. That the ability to release people, the ability to delegate, but also to turn your back, not just hover. How did you manage it then? And did it work? Or would you do it differently now?
I would do it so much differently now. I would definitely, create a clear demarcation, between, sales and marketing, but I will let marketing do marketing. I will let ops do ops and do what they do to execute it, and let those who are supposed to help us raise the funding do it as well. And so I would, and then also, Tim, fear plays a big part
Oh my gosh.
in execution. And so sometimes it makes you gun shy, of not really, making the right decision, because you're afraid. You're afraid to take that leap when you've got people that are actually, way more qualified than you to actually do it. And so that, is what I would actually change. I would let them do what they're qualified to do, and I would sit back and learning how to find a place of peace, that knowing that you made the right decision when it comes to people and giving them the right roles. And then it's hard sometimes to, decide on, okay, creating those roles, and then allowing folks to do what they're good at.
That's got to be really tough to not only manage your own energy, but also to make sure your people have the skills that they need to do. So did you hire for that? Did you look for that? Did you develop and train for that? What did you do to make sure your team, and I'm going back in time because I know you've got a different approach now, but back and then, what were you doing to make sure that I'll call it your dependencies were strong?
Mm-hmm. So I had to look. So I had to, first I had to look internally and what my gaps were as a leader.
Mm.
And as I looked at what my gaps were as a leader, I had to figure out, okay, what am I really not good at? And I said, I need to bring in people that are really qualified to be able to do that, and to come and be a part of us, and running a startup. You've got to bring in people that are qualified
Yeah.
and better than you. And one thing as a leader, I recognize, to execute, you've got to bring in people that aren't afraid, and you can't pass that fear of failure onto them.
Mm.
You have to allow them to do what they do.
That's critical. Wow, that's big. So in other words, as a leader, one of your primary responsibilities to execute is to make sure you're not spreading your own fear, your own doubts into your team, as we'll call it poisoning the water, so to speak, that everybody has what they need to just run with it.
That is correct.
Let's fast forward. So COVID hits, COVID goes hard. You have literally got, I know enough of the narrative. You've got stuff set up. You've got all your legal requirements met to produce alcohol. You've got warehousing set to go. You've got everything ready to rock. You've got a whole supply chain, and you're literally stuck in the water. How did it unstuck?
How did it unstuck? Unstuck was, I knew that COVID was a different animal. We've never seen anything like this in the country. So I had to figure out, well, we've got certain things in place now that if we made a pivot now, it was either pivot or die. So taking what we already have in place and making a pivot to be able to develop, different revenue streams to move forward is what we had to do. So one of the things that, I looked at was, okay, well, what the team that I have, how can we execute right now in this current business environment? And now remember, during COVID, you couldn't go to bars. Bars were closed. You couldn't have events. Events were done. So folks weren't buying spirits during that time, through the traditional means.
Right. And certainly not a brand new brand that didn't know. I mean, they're going to get what they know, and that's it. There's not a time to go do marketing events and all the other stuff that you had planned, in Hollywood and everywhere else that you were thinking. So
Right.
What did you land on?
I landed, so industrial distribution and being a reseller is what I landed on. And so looking at what we already had in place, we actually had one of our business partners now come to us and say, we'd love for you to be a strategic reseller for us to companies that have certain supplier diversity requirements. And I looked at it, and that's my background. I've done it for over 20 years. And I said, you know what, I can actually do this. So what we decided to do is that sometimes your idea might be a great idea, but it might not be the right time for that idea. And so, so with that being said, we had to pivot to what, you fall back to what sometimes in the midst of a crisis. And so that's what we did. So we moved to industrial, distribution. And then, before you know it, we've got some, huge customers that are, that started working with us, the Dutra Group, one of the largest dredging companies in the country, UC Berkeley. So UC Berkeley, as well as UCSF and the state of California, with all of those different institutions we started working with, and then all of a sudden we shot up. So all of a sudden the bourbon, we had to shelve it. And because obviously if you don't figure out how to, make money, you're in trouble.
If you're not in business, there is no business, for facts.
That is correct.
So you guys went, and I know you also got into medical supply. That was another big piece of it. You were able to leverage your network, and you were able to turn on just literally, it seemed overnight, because you had built all this other stuff. You just said, let's stop, let's redefine the problem. And if we redefine the problem, what problems can we solve?
That is correct.
And that's where you went. And I literally watched you guys go 7 figures in revenue, like immediately. It was crazy.
Right. It was that year, that 2020 was
2020.
Insane. 2020 was insane. So we knew we're going up there. And then also my team's core competencies was a perfect fit. And so that's when you can really execute, Tim, is when your team, when their core competencies meet where you're going and what you can do, it becomes easy to execute.
Wow. So let's pivot over. Let's talk about that, because my belief is that execution is fundamentally a decision-making science. It's about the decisions that humans make. And so your people are your secret sauce to executing a strategy. It's not your technology. It's not your market position. It's the people, because whatever happens, whether it's the economy, supply chain disruptions, the market, COVID, whatever, those are all external things. It's how we respond. And more importantly, how the people that are in this organization respond, that makes a difference. So what are the things that you've learned to look for to make sure people know and do from a human side of execution?
From a human side, what are they passionate about? And their skills and passion, because your skill and passion should match, I believe. And so when your skills and passion match, it makes it easy to execute. Because when you put pressure on someone that their passion doesn't meet their skills, you're actually setting your team up for failure and the ability and the lack thereof to be able to execute.
Wow. Is that because when you need that passion, you're going to need people to dig deep and have that extra courage and that loyalty, that commitment to do something because it's personally fulfilling, not just good for you as the CEO? Okay.
That is correct. That is correct. Because, why put someone, that is a salesman, to do marketing? Or why put someone who's a salesperson to do ops?
Yeah.
or through technology. It just doesn't make any sense. It's irrational.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, and it's also, how do I say this? It's borderline unethical. I mean, if you're doing business the right way, you're not just serving your customers, you're serving your team.
That
That's
is
what
correct.
leadership is. Leadership, I'm a huge believer in servant leadership. So what you're saying is great execution is anchored on people that you've already served by getting them into positions and into roles that they're going to not only do well in, but they're going to be fulfilled, they're going to be happy, and they're doing their passion, or they're experiencing their passion while everybody's, working their butts off to get stuff done.
That is correct. That is correct. And see, the other part too, one of the biggest things that I learned was this, is don't be offended when someone tells you you're wrong, that knows more than you about, certain aspects within your company. So I had that, and I was just like, wait a minute, how are you going to tell me how to do this? But, I look back, I'm like, I should have been, humble enough, servant leadership, to say, you know what, you got it. So
It's you're talking two things here that are really powerful. One is humility, but the other is boldness. And we don't think about strategic execution requiring boldness, but it does. Not in the boldness of just go stand and face the storm, but boldness in terms of being able to communicate openly to leadership and peers and other functions. Say, look, this is broken. Let's talk. If we can't talk, we can't execute.
communication is so, if there's no communication when it's time to execute, you're going to experience some problems and difficulties in trying to, move towards the goal, as a team. It's just like a football play or a basketball play. You have to be in the right place, the right position at the right time. It's all about timing. And if you don't have the communication or the nuances of communication, then it's different. So now, on my team, it's pretty much, I really delegate, and I allow the folks on my team to do what they're great at. And I sit back and I'm just like, wow, they're doing what they're really great at. You might be great at technology, but you might not be great in front of people. You might be,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
so my head spent a little bit because communication, I hear everybody I've talked to, the communication comes up, but you're now talking, you're separating between, there's communication that happens because I put it out there, we're clear up front, we made sure everybody understood, but you're also talking about real-time communication, like live in the moment. And I'll use the example of football, call an audible, right? We line up, we are ready to execute the play according to what was already scripted at halftime. We're going to go do this. And all of a sudden you see the opportunity. It's like audible. We're going to change it. I'm going to move people around. We're going to do something completely different and we're going to move forward. How do you manage that as a leader so that people have just in time, in the moment communication and not just, look, I'm just going off the email I got last month?
correct. So it's constant feedback and flow, with communication and actually listening as a leader. Sometimes you could get so committed to what you think is the right way to execute, to where you've got to let your people make the audible. Let your people make the audible. That's outside of what you think you should do. If you don't let your people make the audible, then it's the play you can't execute.
But that's going to be like impossible if you have fear right off the bat. You cannot delegate. You cannot trust people to make, because not only are you afraid of your mistake, you're afraid of their mistakes. And now you're dipping into not only failure, but trying to be a control freak and a micromanager.
That is correct. I agree 100%. If you are a control freak, you are essentially a boa constrictor on your company's.
Wow. You're literally choking your people.
You're choking your people. You're choking the life out of them, and you're going to lose them. We both know people don't leave companies. They leave, bad leadership, and leaders that constrict a person's ability to be able to execute is an issue. Because what happens is that you have a vision, but they also have a microcosm of your vision, of how their vision fits within your company. And if that doesn't work and you constrict that, they're going to leave. Yeah. And you're going to lose them.
Yeah. Wow. This is big. There's probably people listening right now who've lost some really dear talent on their teams.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the hard mirror moment. This is a, look in the mirror and what's the face in that mirror telling you, is it something you did? Or in some cases, it's maybe you're not the boss. It's something the company did and senior leadership did, and you weren't able to defend that. I've walked that path. I know when you're trying to tell your team, hey, hang in there, and your own company is like making it harder to do your job, it's brutal. It's
Mm-hmm.
brutal. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, we're back to that humanity. We're back to that people stuff. That is the secret sauce of execution. What else do you do then when you have people? Do you recruit for those things? Do you train for those things? Do you mentor? How do you make that part of your DNA as a company? Because what you're talking about is literally lifeblood kind of concepts. How do you make sure you're injecting that lifeblood and scaling it as you grow? Because I know your company's growing and you're adding people and you're getting bigger and larger customers, which requires better support and all that. And of course, better execution.
That is correct. It's I call it partnership and business frequency. So when you are working with your people, and you've got to really, as a leader, to execute, you've got to see them as partners. If you don't see them as partners, then you're not going to trust the decisions that they make. Period. You have to trust that your people are making the right decisions, calling the right audibles, and doing the right things, and communicating so that you are comfortable with. I mean, sometimes you're not going to be comfortable with the decision they make, but you know that they're going to, be able to do it, based on the core competencies that you brought them over for as far as recruiting them.
That partner word is so important, because I think we get in terms of hierarchy. We think in terms of hierarchy. We think in terms of, org charts and whatnot. And you're just talking about, hey, we're on the field playing, and everybody's got their number on their shirt. They have a role to do. But I wonder if there's something we do as a leader that enables that partnership, because it can't just happen just because people are nice. I think in terms of, how you empower your team to succeed, how you block downfield. The phrase I use, back to American football, block downfield. All my rugby friends like, there's no blocking. There is in football. And so somebody else can still carry the ball, but you're knocking obstacles out of the way so that they can be successful. What are the things that you now do to block downfield? What are the things that you do to make sure your partners can be successful, instead of just saying, okay, you're my partner, go figure it out?
Right. So I talk to my partners and say, what do you need from me to make sure that to accomplish the goal that we're trying to accomplish and execute? Do you need from me? And let's outline it in the best way possible with flexibility. And let's go from there. If you don't outline that with your partners, then, and see them truly as a partner, and be humble to have that servant leadership and serve to make sure that they have everything they need to be successful, then you're going to really cause some issues and problems in, changing the business model, or enforcing that execution part, because on the technology, I know nothing about technology. I mean, I'm not even on TikTok yet. Now I have to be on TikTok because we have to market, the company in such a different way because of the importance of social media. And I know nothing about that. And so I have to literally say, hey, go for it, do what you need to do, and go for it. And so one of our, my whole team, we talk about it. I mean, we meet twice a week, and we go through it and talk about it, and we establish again, you always talk about clarity, and we establish clarity, and we go from there. And sometimes you might not be comfortable with even if you get clarity, you still might be comfortable, but you've got to let it go. You've got to let it go, and you've got to let them do what they're good at. And so that's how you pretty much execute. Because, yeah, I hand the ball off. I say, student body right, and the running back goes the different way, but he's on the field. He might see something totally different. than I see, because he's actually on the field and you let him do it. He or she do it, and you let him go in and score.
Wow. That's it. That's probably the perfect point to wrap this up. This idea that you can have a plan, but then you have to release it and you have to let people go, as long as we're all shooting for the same goal. And that's the critical piece I hear you saying, is that if we are clear on what success looks like and we're all going for the same definition of success, it is amazing how quickly people will define what they need to do in order to get there, because you're all shooting for the same thing.
I agree 100%, Tim. That has to be done in order for your team to execute and to do that. And so, and the other part too is that within our success, so it's two things within our success. I discovered, okay, when COVID, occurred and our revenue generated, at some point I knew that COVID was going to be over.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, okay, what are we going to do when that occurs? How are we going to execute that? So, because we have to change our business model again, because, again, China all of a sudden floods the market with medical supplies and various things of that nature. And then the prices drop. And then all of a sudden your profitability goes down. And then, so you have to look at all of that, which impairs your ability to be able to execute, and so that's why, you look at it and you hear your team, we start saying, okay, we need to, pivot again. And don't be afraid to let your people pivot. Let them pivot. Let them pivot. Let them pivot, brother. You got to let your people pivot. If you don't, man, it's not going to be a good situation for your business, especially a young entrepreneurship business. We started in 2019, and we hit that. We're at that 3-year mark now, which is when most businesses, fail that are starting and stuff like that. And so we're starting to see that we are highly flexible, and our customers recognize that these guys are flexible. We will jump outside of what's normal and create a new normal. So think about this. Technology always changes. And, and I always tell my team, we don't necessarily want to be the cell phone, but we want to be the chip in the cell phone, so we can always change the technology in the phone, because some of the components never change.
Yeah.
We want to be the component, in helping, that change occur so we can execute.
That's awesome. That's so good. JD, thank you so much. I appreciate you not only sharing your story and the transparency, but also the insights you brought today. They're really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you and all the support that you've given us. And we're excited. And I'm excited about the podcast and what you're doing. Hopefully this helps a lot of entrepreneurs and folks that are trying to execute.
What a great conversation. I hope you were able to be inspired by the power of grit and courage in JD's story. I'm curious, what are your biggest takeaways? And how are you going to use them? My 3 biggest takeaways are: self-awareness, especially for your own gaps as a leader, is critical. This keeps you from spreading your own fears into your team, because fear keeps you and your team from pivoting. Passion is as important as skill set. Passion drives courage, commitment, and effort. Your people need to be treated as partners in the business, not cogs. Partners need to be empowered with the resources they need. It's the role of leadership to provide this empowerment. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with at least one person and leave me a review on whatever platform you downloaded this podcast. Your feedback is invaluable to me. And more, onward and upward.